Hey, thanks for joining me. This will be probably kind of a short little video, but I want to ask a question, and I hope people that watch the video will leave a comment and respond. But I'm curious, what your knife story is. I think most people that are really into cutlery or knives kind of have there's a backstory to that. So I thought I would share mine, and then I hope that people that are watching this will maybe share some of theirs too. So my background, my mother's Japanese. My dad met her during the Korean War, and growing up, my mom talked about her grandfather, who was, according to her, samurai. Now I don't know, I haven't tried to put the dates together, but I think that would go far enough back in time that he would probably be kind of towards the end of the samurai people. But anyway, the story is that he would get up in the mornings, and he would have his katana and his wakizashi, and he would go out in their garden and he would practice, go through his katas, and he would go through this routine every day. And then periodically he would polish the blades on his swords and sharpen them. And so he had a cloth bag of some kind with some kind of powder in it. I really don't know what that was, but he would tamp that powder on the blade with this cloth bag, little bag full of some kind of powder that, the powder would kind of filter through the cloth, and he would tamp that powder on the blade, and then using a little silk cloth and his thumb, he would polish the blade and keep it clean and bright. And I don't know if that was also possibly part of the sharpening, or maybe just like we strop a blade, using that cloth and his thumb to polish the edge. I really don't know. She didn't go into that much detail, but he would go through this process of polishing the blade, and then he would take this silk cloth that he had been using, and there was a stream flowing through the garden in their home, and he would float that cloth on the water, and as it flowed down the stream, he would stick the blade of the sword into the water with the edge facing upstream, and as the cloth came across the edge of that blade, it would just part as it went across the blade. Now that's the story. I don't know how much real truth to that there is. You see or hear some legendary stories about how sharp samurai swords are, and like in the movie The Bodyguard, I think, he throws a scarf in the air and it comes down and parts over the blade. How much of that is real and how much of that is legend, I really don't know. I know that the Japanese cutlery can get just amazingly sharp, yet in modern times I don't see those demonstrations done in real time, so I don't know. But as a young kid, you can imagine the impression that had on me, and I would hear this story about my great-grandfather, who was samurai and a warrior, and this thing he went through with his samurai sword and his wakizashi, and he polished them and sharpened them. And you can imagine that as a young boy I became fascinated with knives and cutlery, and as much as anything, sharpening them. I mean, I'm sure I probably wore a few pocket knives out just by sharpening them too much. And of course, the early sharpening stones I had were just carborundum stones that you were never going to get a super sharp edge out of. And later on, I graduated to my dad gave me an Arkansas stone. I still have it. I'll have to show it at some point, but it's really nice little bench stone made, made of hard Arkansas. And I went through just a lot of knives as a kid. Like any kid, I lost my share of pocket knives. Interestingly, I still have one. It's this little bitty Schrade old-timer. It's a 180T. At some point I'll have to actually make a video about it. But the 180T is just a single blade penknife with a liner lock. It's just kind of cool. Actually has the word press stamped into the brass where you press to unlock it. And the blade's a little wobbly now. The joint has kind of loosened up. I don't use it anymore. It's still very sharp. But this was a knife I got probably when I was 10 or 12 years old, somewhere in there. And somehow I managed to hold on to this one. I still have it, which is kind of cool. But I went through a lot of knives. I was always fascinated with cutlery. Those of you that are old enough to remember Herders Incorporated in Waseca, Minnesota, you could mail order. Back then there was no internet, of course. You could mail order things. You'd you'd fill out an order form and write a check, and my dad would write a check. I'd have to give him my paper route money or whatever to pay for it. And then, you know, you'd mail this off and then start waiting, and days would go by, and finally something, a package would show up in the mail. And like, this is a herder's skinning knife. I had some fascination as a kid with skinning knives, and I have no idea why. I don't know what in the world I would have tried to skin with this. I mean, I don't know. Still have the sheath and everything. But I got this when I was, I don't know, 12 or 13, something like that. Still managed to hang on to that. It's a great old knife. Probably have to do a video about that one too. But, you know, as I got older, I still am fascinated with Japanese cutlery, and so I've purchased some Japanese kitchen cutlery. You know, they have the laminated steel blades, and you can see the Hamon line where the lamination is, and you know, these just work beautifully, and I love using them, and they get super sharp, as yet none of them will part a silk scarf that you drop on it. But this that's kind of my backstory. You know, my mom kind of filled my head with these stories of my great-grandfather who was samurai and his cutlery, and I just developed a fascination with all things knives, and as much as anything, sharpening those knives. So anyway, that's my story. I hope you'll leave a comment and share your story. I always love hearing from you. If you would, please click and like and subscribe buttons on the channel. Leave me a comment. Tell me about your knife story. And thanks for watching.